Hello there, today I have a very exciting comparison between two of the best sets of the cameras and lenses. What I have here is my Canon R5 and my beautiful lens 85mm of Canon, and with my Fuji XH2S, which I'm taking this shot with it, with this 90mm of Fuji. I'm choosing these two lenses because they are both of them for portrait. So in photography special, I'm gonna check the testing between these two things. And now with the camera, we know that for the self process and the profile mode, I cannot go with 10-bit with Canon. So in the equal condition, I decided to go with the Canon on C-Log and C-Log 3. And with my Fuji, I'm gonna go with the F-Log and F-Log 2. So in these equal conditions, we're gonna check the result and outcome. And at the end, I wanna see which one and which of these sets gonna be much more practical for me, for video shooting, for my photography, and it's more handy. So back to my studio, we're gonna see the result together. Start with my Canon R5 today, and I want to do much more details testing today with my R5 and my Fuji. First of all, let me tell you that this shot is taken by Fuji XH2S. We all know that with the R5, Canon R5, we cannot go with the 10-bit internal 10-bit video process. So I have to go with different video shooting. I'm gonna try C-Log and C-Log 3 with my Canon, and also self-process video shooting with it. So I want to check in the equal condition and equal situation between these two cameras, which one can be much more practical and helpful for me, or maybe a backup camera for me, for my especially video shooting. So we're gonna go and check this first. Wow, even though that is my very favorite actually combination, this camera and this lens, but I have to admit that it is too heavy to be handled sometimes. I feel so tiredness on my shoulder. In compared to the Fuji, I mean, that is much heavier and maybe a bit harder to be handled. Let's see the result in the videos. Another option that I want to focus and make the testing on it today is about the dynamic ranges. We all read about it in all different sources, and today between these two cameras I want to test these dynamic ranges as well, and to see how it can be affected on my project. before talking about the other options, I have to also mention about the advantage of this camera, and it is the weight of it. It's so light, it's so easy to be handled. So if you want to use it for long-term purpose, so you have to consider this option and this advantage. It makes it much more easier to be handled in compared to the Canon, and the weight of Canon with that 85mm lens. Even though this 90mm lens is also heavy, but it is much more easier for me to handle it. Well, so far up to now, which I've done this testing here, I think I can't choose between these two cameras because I guess and I believe this Canon is helping me a lot with photo shooting, while with video shooting I like this Fuji. And one more thing, which is my concern, is about the autofocus, because I read in the many reviews that autofocus in Fuji is a bit weak, but I think it's doing well. I mean, comparing to this Canon R5, so far I didn't have any problem. Now back to my studio, we're gonna check it with much more details and then we will decide. Well, back to my studio, I'm trying to collect all the shots we had and do the editing, but I can admit that the files which I got like C-Log or C-Log 3 with Canon are really bothering me. It takes a lot of time for editing. By the way, I'm using Premiere program for my editing, and with my Fuji I don't have this problem. It gives me 10-bit ProRes format and so easier to be edited. But that's another advantage actually with Fuji. With Canon, it is really a hard challenging, I think. Here I've got two of my photos. On my left side I have my Fuji 90mm lens f2, and on my right side I have my Canon R5 85mm f1.2. Let's zoom in and check the details and sharpness. Well, both of them actually are sharp, and you can see all details in the photo and skin texture and special on the eyes, but I feel I have much more sharpness and much more clear touches on my Canon. And if I want to talk about the colors, I feel in Canon I have much more natural colors in compared to the reality. And also one more thing that I noticed is that with Canon, even though everything is so sharp, all the details are there, but there's a kind of softness as well. It seems that the colors are blended into each other, and it doesn't give you so exaggeration on the texture of the skin. So for portrait especially, and for photo shooting, for image quality, I also prefer to go with Canon. I have two more photos to compare here in the same conditions of the light, actually daylight. On my left side again I have my Fuji, on my right I have my R5. Let's zoom in and see the self process of the cameras and light process, or color processes. Both of them are sharp enough. I think this Fuji 90mm is doing so great. But what we can see here, I think you can see much more warm colors or natural colors in Canon R5. In Fuji, I have much more colder, touches in it. But with the sharpness, I can admit that both of them are doing very well. And this is much more zooming, and you can see they're all nice. And if you want, you can go back to your Photoshop or any editing program to make the colors or light balance on it. But as far as you have these details on your photos and this sharpness, you can say both of them are very perfect to go for print even. We all saw the results, and in both ranges. If you want to ask me, I think I love both of these sets. These are my favorite sets. But it seems that they are playing two different leagues. Depends on your project and depends on your taste. You can choose among them. Fuji set is much more cinematic. There are some kind of movie touches, cinematic touches inside it. It seems that you are watching a very high quality movie or series when you are shooting the videos, especially with Fuji. While in Canon, you can't see this kind of touches, even though when you go with the Select or Select 3 and after editing, putting all the filters or making different processes, still you cannot have that cinematic touch in it. But when I'm talking about the image quality or photo shooting, Canon is giving me much more better feeling about the colors especially, and that the smoothness. While I have that sharpness in the photos, I also have that smoothness. As I said also in my photos, I can see much more blending colors inside it. So it depends on your taste again. But there are some facts, especially on the price issue. If I have the budget, I can go for both of them. I can choose both of them. But if I have just some kind of limited budget, of course, having this Fuji set is much more practical. It's lighter. I'm talking about the weight of it. It's lighter. It has much more varieties of the lenses. And the price also, considering the price with this high quality outcome, is much more cheaper than Canon. So at the end of the story, I can say if you're gonna focus on your photo shooting, then just go for Canon maybe. But if your concern is or your project is based on the video shooting and you want that cinematic touch, of course, Fuji is doing perfectly great. Come, let's check my closet. I wanna show you what I meant actually. So here I have all my Fuji lenses. 1655, 90mm, 56mm, 33mm, 16mm, and 23mm of lenses with this camera gear of Fuji. All of them cost equally with one Canon R5 camera and these two lenses only, which is 85mm and my 70-200mm of lenses. So when I was saying that going with Fuji is much more practical or economical, I meant this. I have more variation of lenses with the almost similar result. Of course, if I want to go with more professional job in my video shooting, I may go with these two nice lenses for Fuji as well. I will make the review with them later on, but here was what I meant about. Well, two other options that we have tested today was about the dynamic range and also autofocus. I can say that Canon R5 cannot compete with Fuji on dynamic range. This Fuji is doing perfectly great. And if your project is about video shooting and this dynamic range is so important for you, then definitely go with Fuji. So that's not the option that in Canon you can count on it maybe. And the other matter is about the autofocus. I have read a lot about this autofocus issue and weakness in Fuji in different sources in internet. But as I checked and as you also saw, there was no any problem. I mean, these two cameras, both of them in autofocusing, were doing almost similar. So that's not going to be a kind of a concern for me. What I can emphasize again is about the price issue. If I have that limited budget, I may go with Fuji, because with the price of one Canon R5 with one 85mm lens, or maximum if I want to add one more lens to it, I can buy a whole set of camera and lenses in Fuji camera. So again, I want to say that depends on your project or depends on your taste. You can choose among these two cameras, but for me, I prefer to have both of them. For video shooting, I go with Fuji, and for Canon, I go for photo shooting.